I can't say that like I'd be lying if I said like as a 25-year-old I was like, man, like what a blessing that like I have a 6 ERA in the big leagues and like I'm getting sent to AAA. Like, man, like this is this is gonna serve me well later in life.
I'm
right?
grateful.
I'm super grateful, right?
But like, what would you tell that person?
And I would tell that person to enjoy the journey. Like it's the biggest thing that like I tell anybody.
Jacob, thank you for coming on the podcast. Really grateful and honored to call you a friend and to have you here in studio. Thank you for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about it.
So I figured a good place to start would be with the top of the story. The headline of first round draft pick, 9th overall, 2009 MLB draft. What was that feeling like?
Man, what a moment. So when I think about that moment, I can still remember vividly like sitting in my parents' basement. So draft day comes and you're excited, but at the same time, like I actually wasn't in that great of a mood because I was not afraid, but in the Major League Baseball draft as a high school player, there's a lot of other factors that come into play outside of just like how good you are. So it's like, do you want to go to school? Do you want to sign? How much is it going to take to sign you? So like all draft day, I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of excited, but then my agent told me like maybe these teams aren't going to pick you because your number's too high. So I like didn't want to invite anybody over. Like if you think of the NFL draft and you see these guys like in the green room and they're like supposed to go top 5 and they go like 25th overall or second round, like it looks like a nightmare. So I was like, I don't want that, right? And baseball, the baseball draft isn't quite any of that like big show. So I didn't want to have any family over. So it was just my dad, my mom, my 2 brothers. We sat in the basement. We watched it on TV. I can still remember I was sitting in this recliner and the first like 8 picks go by and it felt like it took like 3 hours. Cause again, I didn't even know if I was going to get picked, but I kind of knew Detroit, who was picking 9th, was like somewhat interested. And I remember when they called my name, just running over, giving my dad like this big hug and just saying like, we did it. And like, it still gives me like goosebumps to think about it because it was such like a we moment. Like everything that led to that was stuff that like my parents had helped me with, something that, like my brothers had been a part of. And like, we were all in this room together, just like celebrating it.
And then what happens the next day?
The next day you feel like you're on top of the world.
Really?
So like you feel, you're getting interviewed by like all the media, you're getting interviewed by like the people that are covering the major league team. So like I go from high school baseball player, St. Louis, Missouri, to top 10 draft pick. All my friends are texting me. All my buddies are like, oh, you're gonna be a professional baseball player. But the way the MLB draft works is like, especially at the time, there was still like this big negotiation period. So it was like, yeah, I got drafted really high, but there was going to be all this like waiting game to figure out like, okay, am I going to sign? Am I not going to sign? So like it felt cool, but then at the same time, I kind of felt the same.
And then, so take me through like when you say to your dad, we did it. What exactly, when does the journey start for baseball? Because I'm sure that milestone is like, it's like, all right, you become a professional in a sense, but then it's like, it starts way before then. And your beginning of like, all right, I'm playing baseball starts what, when you're like 5, 6, 4?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can remember my dad taking us to these fields in the middle of nowhere, St. Louis, and like throwing us BP. And we would always hit on like the field that had the shortest fence so we could hit homers. And dude, my baseball journey started with me. This is like my earliest baseball memory. I played for this team called the Lightning. So like for the Lightning, and it was like the first year of like coach pitch, I want to say. So like no T-ball, but not regular pitchers. So like coach pitch. And I had been like practicing, but like I wasn't very good. And I can still remember we get to the end of the season. I had no hits, none, 0 hits. So we get to the end of the season. We have like this team party or whatever. And the coach like reads off the batting averages for all the players for whatever reason. He's like, all right, Jacob Turner 0. And I was like, oh, perfect. Like I got no hits all season. So that was like my first baseball memory. So like baseball starts like that journey to get to like getting drafted started so early on. And like I think through like everything that my parents went through to help me get to that point, especially now, like having kids of my own, I think through like all the sacrifices that they made, and it just reaffirms like the impact that they've had on my life.
What age were you when you have 0 hits? Your average is 0.
I want to say we were like 6, maybe 6 or 7. So like that was like one of my, because a T-ball generally is like 5, coach pitch might be like 6. And like, then you start to get into like your pitching and it becomes like more of a real baseball game, so to speak.
And when did you realize you were good or great?
I don't know when I felt like I was, my parents always did such a good job of like grounding us. We were never the kids, and when I say we, my 2 brothers and I, we were never the kids that like my parents ever professed like, you guys are doing so great. But we always played on relatively competitive teams. I generally wasn't the best player. I was maybe like a good player, but I wasn't the best player. I can remember at 14 or 15, I played on this like really competitive team. We brought in a bunch of people from like all around the country, which seems crazy as I think about it, but like we did it and we were really good. Like we had all these guys that ended up playing in college, a couple guys that played professional. I was probably like the 5th or 6th best player in the team at like 14 or 15.
The 5th or 6th best player?
Yeah, so like, but when you think about sports, a lot of what sports is at like a young age depends on like 1, your God-given ability, but 2, like how quickly are you developing, right? Some of these guys by 15, they look the same as what they looked like at 19. So for me, I wasn't like, I was good, you know, I was really good from like a St. Louis baseball perspective, but like when you got to like the bigger stage, it was like, okay, you're like, you can like compete with these guys, but you're not like the best player.
I don't understand how the person who, when they're 14 or 15, is the 5th or 6th best player on their team becomes the 9th best player overall of a draft class just like 4 years later or 5 years later.
It just speaks to the fact that when you're that age and you're still developing, there's so much that is unknown, right? Like, are you going to keep getting taller? Are you going to keep throwing harder? Are you going to keep working hard? Do you want to keep doing this? Because as you continue to move down that line, you know, from 15 to 18, there's a lot of just life stuff that's happening. And you have to decide, like, is this what I really want to be doing? Do I want to commit all the time and effort and energy into doing this? Or do I just want to go be like a normal 16, 17, 18-year-old?
And what were the sacrifices you had to make in those 4 years?
I think for me, the biggest thing was probably when I got to 16 was when I realized, like 16, 17, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get some serious interest from some schools that are like the baseball schools. And I can always remember my dad would always give my brothers and I like the same piece of like words of wisdom. And he'd be like, if you want to do like anything in life, you're generally going to have like some window in time to do it, right? Like, but you have to understand that like when the window's closed, it's very hard to go back. And especially with sports, like sports is this very short window. If you're an elite athlete, you might be a professional athlete for 20 years. And that's like, you're in the Hall of Fame, you're like really doing the thing. So for me, it was understanding that like I had this window. Do I really want to do this? And for me, that was always my dream, to be a professional baseball player. So the sacrifices that I made, you know, I mean, I was just more disciplined at doing the little things. There was no like amazing thing that I was like, man, Jacob's doing this thing, this crazy thing on Tuesday. It was just like the discipline to do the little things, to work out the right way, to learn how to eat the right way, to learn how to get better, to learn what I needed to get better at, to humble myself, to realize like you don't have it all figured out, which can be hard as a 17-year-old that's doing well in athletics.
Were you actually the most disciplined person on your team, or from that age range of 14 to 18?
I would say so. Again, it's all relative, right? As like a 15, 16, 17-year-old, like discipline looks a lot different than like as a, 31-year-old now. Like there's some people in my life now that I have like so much respect for, like how disciplined they are. When I was like a high school kid, like the bar is set kind of low, right? Like you're like, okay, like if I just show up and like I continue to do the same little things over and over again, and maybe I don't go out with my friends and I wake up to work out the next morning, like I've already like surpassed everybody else.
Yeah, super cool. And it's so interesting to think like a high schooler who is the 5th best player on their team could make incredible strides just by doing small things that aren't really apparent. And it's like, why? Like I think back to myself at 15, and I did not have discipline for the things that I love. why don't we? And like, what could we do to instill more discipline into a 15-year-old? Or do you feel like we don't even need to? Are you happy you did that?
Definitely happy I did that. To your first point, when I think about discipline today, I think discipline comes from having something that you're shooting for. So if we use an example of working out, right? Like I don't wake up every day and have this motivation, like I'm going to get up this morning like I did and walk outside when it was 4 a.m, right? But I'm disciplined to do it because like I have this thing I'm doing and I really want to make sure I do it the right way. And so like I see this North Star of like, this is something that like is important to me. I've committed to doing it. But as like a 16-year-old, as a 17-year-old, we don't even, it's hard to even know what you want. You're just kind of like moseying through life trying to figure out like, all right, which way do I go? Do I go left? Do I go right? But for me, yeah, I wouldn't trade those years of what I did and like what I learned for anything. They definitely accelerated my level of, I guess I would say maturity. Like you grow up really fast in that environment because you realize very fast that like baseball's moved from like, this was like something that was really fun for me to do, still really fun, but there's also like this business element. Like if I do this thing the right way, it could really snowball quickly.
Yeah. So take me through this piece of, you love baseball, I assume, right? Would you say you love baseball? And now you get paid for something that you love to do. This is kind of happening with the podcast. This is starting to happen, not at the scale of $5.5 million in a year yet, maybe. But it's like, I'm starting to get paid for the thing I love. How did that change your relationship with the thing you actually did love?
I think it's one of the hardest things to understand because sports is this thing that most of us at some point tried or did or loved or still love or love to watch. It's like an inherent part of our culture. When you get paid for the sport, it's the greatest job in the world. Like, so let me preface it by saying that, like, it's the greatest thing in the world. But it also does change the dynamic of, okay, this is a business, and you realize very quickly, even as an 18-year-old, when I signed, you realize very quickly that, like, this is a business. There's a lot of people that have skin in the game for you to do good now. And it's a dynamic that, like, you have to kind of figure out. Like, people can tell you about it, but like until you experience it, it's very hard to understand like the dynamic of like, okay, well, I'm competing. I'm doing the same thing I was doing last year when I was making no money and I had, $500 in my bank account. And now I've got paid all this money to do this same game, maybe at a higher level, more people watching. So like it's more enjoyable, right? From that sense. But there's also like this, like, okay, it's a business. So there's all these other dynamics that start to come into play.
Well, the interesting thing about it is like not that many more people were actually watching when you go ahead and, where were you in single A to start? It's like, all right, there's not that many people. You're waking up at 4 a.m. You're on the road, and it's probably not what I would imagine professional baseball to look like. So take me through that experience of being like, all right, you signed this contract, this massive contract as the 9th overall pick, and now you're like excited, I'm sure, to be a pro. Then what happens?
Yeah, so I signed this contract. Again, I go from like, am I feeling on top of the world? I'm like, I'm the guy. I'm a professional baseball player. All my buddies are texting me. It's like, everything's great. I go to Detroit, so they're playing like a home game, and what they do is like they brought myself and then the second round pick, Daniel Fields, who's a friend of mine, up there, and we go to the game. They put us like on the Jumbotron. My family comes with me. They put us in this nice hotel. I'm like, man, we have made it. We have made it, Danny. Like, this is it. This is the pinnacle, right? Like, after this, I'm just going to go to the locker room and no. But like the next day, they sent me to Lakeland, Florida, which was their spring training facility. And for people that don't know, Lakeland is kind of its own entity in between Tampa and Orlando. So like if you fly to Tampa and you're going to like Disney World, you might pass Lakeland. But like outside of that, there's not a whole lot happening in Lakeland, Florida. And I remember flying down there. So I come off this like 2-day, I'm the most important person in the world, to I land in Lakeland, Florida. And there hasn't really been like a ton of communication around like who's picking me up, where am I going? And I get there, and there's this guy, young guy, like intern, I found out, that's just picking me up like in his car. And we're driving to the Lakeland, Florida, facility, which is Tiger Spring Training Facility.
You were expecting a limo.
Yeah, kind of like, I'm like, all right, like they really roll out the red carpet in Detroit. Now it's like, oh, this is interesting. This is different. And we go to the facility. At the time, the spring training facility, we stayed in old military barracks. So it was like concrete barracks, 4 bunks in a room, very small. Like, wow, this is way different than what I was expecting. I didn't have a car, so I couldn't like go anywhere. I can remember like 3 or 4 days in being like, should I like give the money back? Because at the time I was going to go to school at University of North Carolina. Chapel Hill's got this beautiful campus. Now all my friends are doing like what I'm looking at as the fun thing. They're like at college doing the college thing. I'm like in this dorm. I'm like, okay, like, is this like what I want to be doing? So it was a unique experience.
One thing that I found interesting from doing research is that in the minor leagues, they don't teach you how to win. They teach you how to be the best person you personally can be. Whereas in college, it seems like they teach you how to win as a team and how different that is going to the professional level. Is that like the biggest takeaway you figured out from being in the minor leagues? And if it's not, like, love to know what is.
It is an odd thing. So in minor league baseball, now the draft has been shortened a little bit, but before the draft was 50 rounds. So, on a major league roster, there's 25 guys. There's 50 rounds in the Major League Baseball draft, plus all the guys that they're going to sign from the Dominican Republic and Venezuela. A lot of really good players are coming in. So they might bring in 60 to 100 guys in a year. And what the minor leagues is meant to do is to take their elite guys, maybe their top 10 to 20 guys in the entire minor league system, and fill in everybody else around them. And that's this really weird aspect because you're not taught to win. You're just taught to get better as a player. And before, it's always been like you're competing, you're just trying to win the game, you're playing in high school, you're trying to get to the next level. In college, it's all about winning. Like college baseball is going on now, and like you watch these guys and they're so into the game because like it's all about winning. It's just like win the game, win the game. And there's certainly guys that like are thinking about what it looks like for them at the next level in the draft, but in minor league baseball, it's this weird dynamic of like you're all on this team together. It's not really about winning. Like you go out there to win the game, but everybody knows that like there's 3 or 4 guys on this team that like the organization's doing everything they can for to try to get them to the next level and get them improved. And generally what happens is like those 3 to 4 guys will move up, and as they move up, those 4 guys turn into 3, and those 3 guys turn into 2, and those 1 guy turns into like this superstar big leaguer. And then out of the rest of the team, there's like 1 guy who just like will not quit, man. Like just keeps working his butt off. And all of a sudden he's a big leaguer too. And they're like, they didn't even see that coming. But yeah, the minor leagues minor league baseball is such a weird dynamic of 25 guys that are all there, but they're all kind of there for different reasons.
What are you there for if you're not there to be a professional or be a major leaguer?
It's not so much that the guys feel differently about what they're there for. Every single guy in that room has a belief that like they can play in the big leagues. Like if they don't believe that, they wouldn't have gotten drafted in the first place. They wouldn't have gotten signed by the team. But the way that I describe it is if you're a first round draft pick, if you're Jacob Turner and you get drafted in the first round, you get like 10 lives. So like if you fail 9 times, like you still have like life 10. So you're like, okay, like I got life 10 to like try to make this thing happen. If you're like a 4th round draft pick, you might have like 1 life or 2 lives. Wow. If you're like a 10th round draft pick, you might like be coming in, you're like, okay, like I got to like create an opportunity for myself. So like I'm getting 10 opportunities. The guy that got drafted in the 4th round might be getting 1 or 2. The guy who got drafted in the 10th round is like, I have to create the opportunity for myself. So it's not so much that the guys on the team feel differently. They all believe that they can be in the big leagues. Like if they didn't have that level of belief in themselves, they wouldn't have been there in the first place. But from the team's perspective, they're saying like, hey, there's a couple guys on this team that like we're kind of focused around, we're building around, and we'll see. We know that like somebody else will create an opportunity for themselves too.
How'd that change your mindset? Did you know you had 10 lives going into it, or was that something you found out after the fact?
You kind of find it out from the other guys that have been doing this thing. So like think about it as a first round draft pick, you haven't done anything. Like if you're a prospect, it just literally means you haven't done anything. Because like the guys in the big leagues aren't prospects anymore because they've done something. So you come in as like a first round draft pick, you're a high prospect, you got all this money, and you're coming into this world where like these guys have been competing, they've been grinding, some of them for years to create an opportunity for themselves. And you're kind of like thrust into this, and then like the spotlight's on you, and this other guy's like, man, I've been busting it for 3 years just to like create this opportunity. So again, it's this weird dynamic that you're coming into. Now you kind of learn from them. Like there's plenty of good ribbing that goes on with guys that are first round draft picks, you know, guys that are quote unquote bonus babies. Because again, like I got paid a lot of money for pitching in high school in St. Louis, Missouri. Like I hadn't done anything. Like I had all the ability, but like there, you know, it wasn't like I was at some SEC college and I was like, you know, national pitcher of the year. It was like I was playing against high school baseball players. So it's just a completely odd dynamic that you're walking into.
In a previous interview, you spoke about how I want to talk to you about like the flow of pitching and like what that feels like exactly, because I think people can relate to this in other parts of their life, but you spoke about how finding the feel is something that is so important to becoming a good pitcher, and your attempt to try to recreate that once you find it. What is that feeling, and how could people go ahead and figure out and find their own flow?
I would answer that in two separate ways. So in one way, there's kind of like this flow state that you would get into when you're going out there to compete. So if you've prepared and you feel confident and you're kind of on a roll, like you've been pitching well, last 3 starts have been good, and like confidence is like an all-time high. When you walk out there, you're like already in this like state where it's just like nothing else is around you. You don't hear anything else. There's all these people and you're just like, I'm just doing my thing. I can remember I pitched at Busch Stadium. So Busch Stadium in St. Louis, where I'm from, we go to Busch Stadium, and the day of the game, I went over to my wife's family's house. We're like having lunch, and I remember her brother was like, hey, are you like excited, nervous for the game tonight? And I was like, yeah. And I remember like after the game, Kristen, my wife, was like Nick was so shocked. Her brother was so shocked that I wasn't like on edge, like I'm going to be pitching. And I was like, oh, it's just like, that's what you do. Like, because you're in this state of like, this is all I practiced for my whole life. Like I'm so used to doing it. Like, and now on the flip side, if you're not throwing well and you're not in that like flow state, you're out there, you feel like you hear everything. Like the guy in the third row, you're like, you feel like you can like hear everything they're saying. And you're just like, man, that's not where you want to be. But the idea of feel, so probably the only other sport that I've ever felt this in is golf. So I love golf. Golf and pitching are both very practice focused sports. And what I mean by that is it takes athletic ability, but it's also very like you're doing a same repetition over and over and over and over again. So to get really good at it, you get these feels where it looks the exact same. You know, if Danny watched me on video, you'd be like, that looks the exact same. But I'm like, no, the feel is so different. Like it feels like the ball's coming off this finger right at the right time, or like I'm getting the extension, or I'm getting through the ball, all baseball terms that we use. But the feel is like you find this feel and you just like want to hold on to the feel forever. And it's the same way in golf. Like if you hit a good shot and you're like, your tempo is really good, you're like, I want to hold on to that feel forever. And you try to hold on to it. For me, like I'm not super great at golf, so like I might hold on to it for like 5 shots. But in baseball, you might hold on to the same feel for 6 months. You might hold on to it for like the entire baseball season where like every time I'm like not feeling right, I'm just like going back to like, all right, what was that feel of like that pitch, or the feel of like trying to get the ball in that spot? It's hard to even describe, but it's like such a practice thing that when you've been doing it so many times, you're like, it looks the same on video, but to me it feels totally different.
Is there anything else that comes to mind for places you've found or you've seen other people have a similar thing? You said golf, but I'm curious, like, can somebody listening to this take that into their own life in some way?
I definitely think the first part, like the idea of like being in like that flow state where you're just, you feel so prepared and ready for that moment that you're in, whatever it is, that when it goes by, you you're like, I didn't even realize that happened. Like if somebody was watching, you're like, hey, did you realize you did that thing? And you're like, no, I didn't even realize it. Like I've done it so many times that I'm just used to doing it. I think if you ask most performers, like you think about like a Super Bowl performer, they like perform the Super Bowl, and like most people are watching them and thinking like, wow, they're probably so nervous. And like before they go out there, no doubt, like there's nerves, but like when they go out there, they've practiced it so many times that it's just like inherent muscle movement, and it goes by so fast, and they're in this flow state that when they get done, they don't even really realize what happened. Like it's just like it happened so fast. And I'll give you an example. I remember my Major League debut. So my Major League debut, the greatest sports moment of my life, like family's there, friends are there. And apparently I threw the first warm-up pitch to the backstop. I didn't even know I did that.
No.
So like after the game, my brother's like, oh, you remember you did that? I was like, no. I couldn't even feel the ball. Like I was just out there doing my thing, and like I was so focused on what I was doing. And a lot of baseball players, a lot of my teammates would always talk about, if I could go back to that first day I was in the big leagues, because your level of focus is so heightened and you're in such a state of like, you just don't realize anything else that's happening around you.
Wait, so you threw the ball over the catcher's head, or it was just like before the game? What happened?
Yeah, so before the game, like when you're a pitcher, you get like 7 warm-up pitches or 5 warm-up pitches before you go out there for the inning. So like you're out there for the inning. My very first warm-up pitch, I like spiked it into the ground and like went to the backstop.
Gotcha.
Like normally you might be like, oh man, that's not good. But like for me, I was so in the moment that it was just like, I'm just doing my thing. Like I'm like focused on like who's coming up first and like what I'm going to do. And I'm ready for this moment. I'm prepared. I'm confident. Like if I got called up, I'd been pitching well, obviously. So getting into that flow state, it's hard to even categorize what it feels like until you're in it. And then before you know it, it's over because the performance is over.
What do most people get wrong about the major league system in general?
The fact that the guys that are playing, and I think this is true for really anything where we put people on I'll use a pedestal as an example, but like you see somebody and somebody's starting out podcasts and they see Danny and they're like, man, Danny's been doing this a while. Like I really like the questions he asks. But like with anything that we do that like that in life, I remember the best advice I ever got was like, everybody puts their pants on the same way. And it's really true. And realizing that is I think something that is hard for people to understand, because it's like my friends that are baseball players are just normal people with normal families and lots of other stuff going on outside of life. And the example I'll give you is when you're going through that and you're playing Major League Baseball, you're doing something else that their eyes are on you, it becomes so normal. Like you wake up on Tuesday and you're like, yeah, we have a game tonight, and then we're flying to this place. We have another game on Wednesday. It just becomes like your normal routine. Yet I can remember last year I took my son to a Cardinals baseball game, and I'm watching the game. There's like 40,000 people there. Albert was like on the verge of hitting one of the big home runs he was going to hit during the year. And I just had to like step back and be like, man, this is really cool. Like these guys are playing in front of like 40,000 people. Yet like when you're in the moment and you're doing it, you don't even so much I don't want to say you don't appreciate it, because you do. Like you understand like how hard you've worked to get there, but it's just a normal thing. And so I think that's the biggest thing that people miss is like, they're just normal people that are like doing something that looks different, that gets more attention than maybe what they're doing in their own daily life.
What are the positives and negatives to putting sports on a pedestal?
Well, the positives, I think the positives for the athlete is you have a major platform to affect people's lives. People think, and when I say platform, people think of, let's use like LeBron James as an example. LeBron James is an amazing athlete. LeBron James has this amazing business outside of basketball. He's impacted a lot of people's lives. He started a school, like amazing things. But when I think about impact, like it can be as impactful for LeBron James to sign an autograph for some kid who's showing up for like the one game that he's going to be at for LeBron James's career. Like they're going to remember that moment their entire life. And that's the positives of it, is like you have this platform to to truly make an impact. And I think the negatives of it, there's certainly negatives. I don't know what they would be from the standpoint of like, it's up to the player to decide what they feel like the positives and negatives are going to be. And when I think about the negatives, I smile because I think about like, you get so ingrained in like the daily life. Like on Tuesday we do this, that like you can be, it's like a different reality that you're in professional sports, because like there's people like catering to your every need. Like that doesn't happen in real life, that you just get so used to it. So when somebody is like catering to your like every need and they don't like fold your laundry the way that you're like used to it, people are like, oh, well, like, he missed that shirt. And you're like, wait a second, like reality check here. Like that's not a normal thing. So I think like there can be negatives, but it's really up to the player.
And you left baseball before your 30th birthday, right? So that's like a pretty wild thing that I think I saw that you played, your professional tenure was 4,034 days, and that's 11 years. And then it's like, well, you're done before you're 30, which is like, now you got the rest of your life. So it's like, how did you figure out when it was time to quit?
For me, when I think about doing anything at a high level, you have to love and embrace the process. You have to embrace doing all the little things. It doesn't mean you wake up every day and you're just so excited to do the little things, but you have to embrace the process to become great at anything. And for me, I felt like I was at a point in my career where I didn't love the process that it took for me to compete at that level. I'd had a lot of struggles, a lot of ups and downs. My career was definitely not like this straight line up. It was like I got to the big leagues really fast, and then there were some struggles along the way, and the journey was certainly like very winding throughout those 11 years. And I felt like at the end, I just felt like my heart wasn't in it to do the day-to-day stuff. And I felt like if my heart wasn't into the day-to-day stuff, one, I was taking the spot away from somebody else. And two, it wasn't going to give me an opportunity to truly compete at that level. Because at that point in my career, I had a lot of talent, but like I had struggled a lot. So it was going to take me really diving deep into this process every single day. And for me, there was stuff that I loved outside of baseball. And I saw some guys that like maybe extended their playing career a little bit longer. But for me, my heart wasn't in it. And I was just ready to embrace another process.
Yeah, I'm reading this book, Quit by Annie Duke, right now. And it talks about how most people they quit way too early or way too late. And they think that like, oh, it'll just be another year, another 2, another 3. And then you have someone like Muhammad Ali who's like way past what he should have done for his body and mind. And it's just because that same thing that gets you going to get you to that incredible place is the same thing that says, oh, like I'll keep going past the limit. And I find it pretty remarkable when somebody can look at themselves and be like, nope, that's it. Like this was something that I did at this point and it's time to let it go. So it's definitely an admirable trait or quality.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic when you think about it, because we've talked a lot about this, like the idea of persistence. Like anything in life that you want, you have to have the persistence. So how do you know if you should quit something versus how should you know if like I should just I'm just going through this lull period, I need to persist through it. But the difference is what I would tell you, and like what I've always thought in my life, right or wrong, is like if my heart is in the daily process of getting better, I know that over the course of time, like if I persist through this thing, I'm going to have success. And I think for athletes, it's remembering like what got you here. You need to keep doing that to just stay at that level. It's very similar to like just working out in general. Like you have to pay your dues every day. You don't just like wake up one day and you're like, hey, I got, 6 months of good workouts in and I can just coast for the next 6 months. It's like, you have to like pay the check every day to continue to be there. And I think a lot of guys, they continue on with something, but they don't love the process. You have to love the process. You have to be so ingrained in the process and know that if I continue to do these things, it's going to give me the confidence to perform. It's going to help me through whatever period I'm in. It's not always going to be, you know, the bright, shiny lights, but you got to know, like, if I do this thing over a long enough period of time, I know it's going to work.
So you leave baseball and you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to start the process of figuring out the next thing. And you took a massive pay cut, going from however much you were making to zero. And so take me through that process and like what you learned about yourself over 8 months of working for nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of, I have this picture on my computer that's a screensaver. That's this guy climbing this mountain. He's like halfway up the mountain.
And is that why we get along? Because that's the screensaver?
I saw
of the
yeah,
podcast?
I think your picture's cooler than mine. I think mine's like some stock image. Oh, but it's like a good reminder to me of anything that you want to do in life. Like, you have to be humble enough to start at the bottom. Like, there's no shortcuts to anything really cool. And if there are, like, at some point, like, you're going to be found out that you took that shortcut. So for me, when I got done, it was, okay, I know that I want to do something like meaningful with like the next chapter of my life, which is kind of how I viewed it for a couple different reasons. Like, one, I have young kids, and like, I want them to see, like, they got to experience a little bit of their dad being a baseball player, but when they get older, they're not going to remember the ins and outs, like the sacrifices that like my wife and I made to make that life happen. And I really want them to see the work ethic, because that's what I saw in my dad. So that was one reason. And then the second reason for me, like, when I think about like, what was I comfortable going back to, like, and literally like making nothing, was like, I just have passion around like what I want to do. And I'm like, I know if I can learn this process from good people, I can start climbing that mountain again. And I don't know what that is going to look like. I don't know what the end goal, there's really no end goal. It's just like, I want to start doing it again, and I'm fine starting at the bottom. But it took a lot of humbling to do that.
I think a lot of people listening to this might be in their second season or their third identity of like, all right, I'm 30 years old, or I'm 40, or I'm 50. I spend all this time and capital doing this thing, and now I'm going to go a different direction. How do you, one, gain the confidence to do that? And two, like, what should people be thinking about as they enter a second chapter of their life?
The thing that helped me the most was, one, first and foremost, just, you got to be humble. You got to be willing to say, like, I don't have all the answers. And I remember towards the end of my career, I got drafted out of high school, and my parents were always big on college. So I was like, okay, at some point, like, I'll go back and I'll get my degree. And I sat through an orientation as like a Major League Baseball player with like a 19-year-old showing me around a campus and doing like the whole orientation thing of like college. So it was like very humbling. I remember calling my wife afterwards and being like, wow, this is like very, like, I'm not as cool as I think I am.
How old were you?
I was 27 at the time.
Wow. 27 years old.
27 years old. Like, and like, I was doing it while I was still playing, but I knew like at some point I wanted to do it. So I was like, I might as well just start now. So one, you have to humble yourself. And two, the best thing I did was I just asked everybody that I felt like was successful in like anything around like money and finance, which is like what I enjoy, to go to lunch with me. Like, let me buy you lunch, let me buy you coffee, and just hear your story. I want to hear like how you got to where you're at. And not only that, I want to hear, now that you're where you're at, would you do it again? Because I'm in this position now where I have some flexibility to decide, like, okay, I know I love this concept, but there's a lot of different elements of this concept that I could go with. So it was very helpful for me to hear from people that were 20 years down the road in their career, and a career that I thought like maybe I would want to do. Do I want to do that? Which is funny because the first guy that I met with worked at an investment bank. And I was like, man, I described it as like, I love understanding like how the world works. So understanding like how people are making money, different ways that like their businesses have grown. And investment banking is kind of this like gleaning insight into different industries as companies are selling and buying. And it's like, oh, investment banking, that'd be cool. And he's like, dude, you don't want to do that. It's like, you don't want to do that. I was like, why not? He's like, don't you have kids? I was like, yeah. He's like, you're going to be working like 15 to 17-hour days for like 6 days a week for like 5 to 6 years just to like break in. I was like, okay. Like, sold. Don't want to do that. But like without having that conversation, without asking him to like go get coffee with me, I wouldn't known. I was just like, that's a cool concept. I want to do that concept.
So then you have this concept of like, all right, I'm not going to be doing that investment banking, but what is the thing that I can do that's similar to it? How do you figure out like what's the parallel thing, and what were some of the struggles of figuring out the next thing that you wanted to do and that was right by it?
So I kind of knew after, so I go to lunch with all these guys. I talk to them. I'm like, okay, I really love personal finance, and for me, I had been really blessed to sign for this money at 18. My parents had like instilled in us that like we want to be good stewards of this money that we earned, and I think one of the best things my parents did was they told me that they would help me build the team of people around me to help me. But like ultimately it was your responsibility to make sure that like you're being a good steward of the money. And so it like sent me into this like deep dive as like an 18-year-old to be like, okay, like how do I not end up on 30 for 30 broke? Because that's like all I ever thought about. It's like, I don't want to end up on broke. Okay. And so like deep dive into like personal finance and like reading a bunch of books and understanding different concepts. And what I realized through that and through going to lunch with all these guys is like, I love like educating people around like money and personal finance. And what I also love is like the concept that like finance in general is very inherently personal. Like it's your decisions with money are going to be different than my decisions with money. And like, it's not always about like the X's and O's. And that kind of led me to like, okay, like I think I could like help educate people and like guide people along the path that like maybe I was on.
What were some of the most impactful books you read around personal finance?
Psychology of Money, like hands down.
Morgan Housel.
And I, obviously that's like a more recent book. What's so great about Psychology of Money and the job that Morgan Housel did with that book is it's so story-based, and it's stories about people with all different facets and coming into money and spending in different ways and the lessons they learn from it. I think that's what always connected with me is the stories of like, okay, like I could read, I've read Benjamin Graham's book on like value investing, and like it's like this very tactical book on like how to look at a stock, and like it can be like painfully boring at times. Like, and I've liked numbers, but like versus like Morgan Housel's book, it's like all these different stories and elements that you can learn along the way. It's probably it is my most gifted book. Like if anybody has interest in like personal finance, I'm like, hey, you should read this book, and then we should like talk about the stories because like I love the book.
Yeah, when I was coming here to gift you a book, I was looking at that on my shelf. I'm like, yeah, he's read this, he knows this. But that was when I thought of you. I was like, Morgan Housel, Psychology of Money, perfect for you. But it's like you make all this money early in your career. How does that change your perception with money?
It helped me to learn fast that money doesn't bring you happiness. And I can remember waking up the day after I signed this contract, and I felt the exact same. Like I was excited, but there wasn't anything that I was like just dying to go out and do and buy. And that was probably the greatest gift that the money at that age gave me. And the gift of just understanding that there is certainly a level of satisfaction that comes with money. There's a certain level of lifestyle that can bring peace of mind with money. Like being able to like pay your bills and like not be stressed about that is like, that brings like a level of satisfaction. But like once you get past a certain point, there's such a diminishing return on it. That was such a great lesson for me to learn at such a young age that I don't know if I don't think most people learn that until they're so far down the path that then they look back and, maybe they're 50 years old and they're like, man, I sacrificed all these things for this game to get to here, to have this much money in my bank account. And then I'm realizing that like, yeah, I won that game, but I lost all the other games. And that was probably the greatest blessing that it gave me.
I love how you said on Twitter that money means nothing and it means everything. And it's just based on that perspective and breaking that down. So helpful to understand and so helpful to internalize. Like, it can mean everything. It also can mean nothing if you're satisfied with what you're doing. So
Yeah, I don't want to downplay, like,
yeah,
there's people that have worked their whole life extremely hard and they're working paycheck to paycheck to pay the bills, and like that is stressful. But I think there's a lot of people that have had success and they're on this success ladder and they're just chasing like the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. And really, if they really sit down and think about it, like they're chasing the next thing to like make the bank account bigger. And I just think ultimately it's like a losing game for you. Like you're going to lose all the other games if that's like the one thing that you're focused on doing.
yeah, which is fascinating since you're in the business of making the bank account go bigger.
Yeah, right.
It's funny how that works out, but it's funny because like even the external perception isn't what is internally filling you up, and it's like clear that finance is internally filling you up. When did you realize you had an interest in it, and when did you start looking at yourself for the first time of being like, what am I interested in, if not baseball? Because I'm sure that's a huge identity.
Again, I would go back to early on. I knew that I just loved the way the world works. I love understanding businesses. There's this road in front of my house that there's all these like small businesses. When I say small, they're like relatively big businesses that you've never heard of. And I remember even as like a young kid driving down the road and being like, what do they do? And like, there's all these cars in the parking lot, like, what do they do? So I've always had this inherent idea of like understanding like how the world works and like how people are making money. My dad was a dentist, so he owned like a small business. So understanding like he has employees and like, how does this work? And I've always loved that. So I feel like that's how it started for me. And the other thing for me was with baseball, as a professional athlete, it can be so easy for you to get wrapped up in that your identity is a professional athlete. Because the first two things that people ask you are like, what's your name? And you're like, my name's Jacob. And they're like, Jacob, what do you do? And you're like, I play professional baseball. So you get like, it's like this such an American thing. Like, what do you do? And then like, you're just like titled as like that guy. You're like not Jacob anymore. You're like the professional baseball player. If I was like a banker, you're like, Jacob, you're the banker. You're the guy that owns the business. So like, it's all you ever hear. The best thing for me when I think back on like why I was able to like disassociate with the fact that like my identity wasn't wrapped up, and that's a couple things. One, the way my parents raised me, like my identity was never going to be what my job title was, and they made that very clear in our lives. And then two, for me, the struggles that I had in baseball. So my baseball career is like straight to the moon. I'm in the big leagues at 20. I'm like, all right, like I'm the guy. I'm going to make $200 million. I was with Detroit, so I was like, okay, I'm going to be like the next great Detroit Tigers pitcher. And it didn't go like that. So like 5 years into my career, I'm like hanging on for life. I'm like, okay, I've used 9 of the 10 lives now. So like I have life 10, but like I really need to make sure life 10 goes good. So, but it honestly helped me move away from the identity of a baseball player, because I was like, okay, I'm 25 years old. This thing's not going to last forever. So what are the things outside of this that like I do have passion around and I'm excited about that like energize me? So it was a blessing and a curse. Like, yeah, the career didn't go the way I wanted, but like it gave me so many opportunities along the way to learn as I went.
Were you able to have that perspective in the moment, or is that just the postscript of what you're after having some time away?
I can't say that like I'd be lying if I said like as a 25-year-old I was like, man, like what a blessing that like I have a 6 ERA in the big leagues and like I'm getting sent to AAA. Like, man, like this is, it's going to serve me well later in life.
I'm
right?
grateful.
I'm super grateful, right?
But like, what would you tell that person?
And I would tell that person to enjoy the journey. Like it's the biggest thing that like I tell anybody. Like we get so caught up in like this end game of like what we think we want at the end of it. And like, it's really this like infinite game, and like, you just enjoying the journey along the way. Don't get me wrong. Like it can be really hard to like stay in the moment and wake up on like a Tuesday when like Monday was bad and be like, I'm going to enjoy the journey today. Like whatever happens, like that's what happens. But I've just come to embrace the journey. Like it was one thing that I wish I would have done earlier on in my baseball career because there was so many ups and downs. Because in baseball, you get drafted, and then you're like, all right, the next big thing is to get to the big leagues. And then once I get to the big leagues, the next big thing is to get to arbitration. Arbitration means you've got like 3 years of major league service time. It's when all of a sudden you're not making league minimum anymore. You like might make a couple $1,000,000 in a year, and you've kind of like established yourself as like a guy. And then once you get to arbitration, the next thing is to get to free agency and sign the big deal. Yeah, like I saw guys along the way, and they get to arbitration and they get to free agency, and it's like not fulfilled because like they signed the big deal. It's like enjoying the journey along the way is like what I wish I could go back and tell like the 18-year-old version of Jacob Turner. And I don't know if you could even embrace as like an 18-year-old because like it's just you kind of have to experience the ups and downs.
When did you come to the realization?
Man, not until like late in my career. And I'll tell you why, because for me, it was hard to even admit for the longest time that baseball wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. Like I didn't tell anybody that. My wife,
But everyone knew. That's the crazy part.
yeah, everyone knew. Everyone knew that like, okay, I was, first round pick, big leagues at 20, like at 27, I've literally never told anybody that like, this is not how I thought it was going to go. And my wife and I mean, we've been doing life together for a long time. So like, she knows Jacob way before like he was a baseball player, like, and even for her, like I didn't tell her until like I'm like 27. I remember we were like sitting there and I was just like, this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. So like, dude, we're like 9 years into my baseball career, 9 years into an 11-year career. And this is the first time I've ever said that because it was just so hard for me to rationalize like, wow, this is just not how I thought it was going to go. Like I've been working really hard and like now all of a sudden baseball's not fun anymore. And like, I'm not enjoying it. I'm just like I'm scratching for my 10th life. I'm trying to get back to the big leagues. And it was just kind of freeing to be like, yeah, like just like not going how I thought it was going to go.
There's so much beauty in telling the truth, and there's so much freedom that comes from telling the truth. Do you remember what inspired you to finally let that out?
I just realized that I'm not playing a video game. There's no like reset button, right? Like when we were kids, like my brothers and I would play video games, like it wasn't going well. You just hit like the reset button and start over again. There's no reset button. And for me, just realizing, just understanding and embracing like where I was as a person, what I've done in my baseball career, the fact that like I've put in all the work, like it wasn't like I had all this regret, like, oh man, like I missed the boat because I didn't put the work in. It's like I put the work in, that was where the chips fell.
I feel as if, based on your story, there would be a lot of people who would hide from that, the truth of it didn't go how I expected it to go for a long time, if not forever. Like still be in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and still holding on to this dream of, I was this first round draft pick and it didn't work out, and like not knowing what to do. Why do you think you were able to tell the truth and be honest, and how can we get more people to lean into that?
It starts with just being comfortable with yourself and who you are as a person.
Yes. That's what I noticed from...
That takes time.
Yeah.
It just takes time. Like,
yeah.
Just being comfortable, like, who you are, and you're not, as like an 18-year-old kid, for me, it was like I was always trying to prove something to somebody. Like that, like I belonged, or like that I was good enough, or that like this team should pick me in the draft. And what I've come to realize is like, I'm just who I am, man. Like, and like, there's a couple like core values that like I live by, and like, I know if I do those things, like good will come out of it, but like, that's who I am. And this is all part of my story. And the one thing that's helped me even more is like, the more I've shared that with people, the more it's helped them. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that would help you. Like, yeah, so that's my story. And it's funny you say that about people not ever like coming to realization. Like if you talk to, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, like just randomly in my life, like people I don't really know. and maybe they like find out my baseball story and they're like, yeah, like I was on my way to being a Division I baseball player, or professional base. I blew out my shoulder and like never been the same. And like, I don't know, maybe they, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I think like any like athlete would tell you they've heard like that same story like 25 times. And it's just coming to the realization of like, you got to be comfortable with like who you are. Like I had this baseball thing. It didn't go the way I thought. Like I learned so much. Like it put me in this amazing spot in life, totally outside of like the financial side. Just like it helped me mature as a person so much faster than I think normal life does, because professional sports is like, it's like you're on the treadmill of life and it's like turned up to like 10 miles an hour.
What's so cool is that baseball gave you the same realization that podcasting did for me, in that it helped me understand myself more. Like, it sounds like that from what you're talking about. And it's like, it's so cool to realize that people can do their own pursuit or their own passion, and it almost like could help you be more you. Like, I wonder like if a carpenter is more them when they, or can learn about themselves from doing their craft. And I wonder like if that's true literally for every profession, everything that you do and put your heart into.
So what was the light bulb moment for you? Like podcasting did that for you?
For me, it was when I had a better understanding of who I am, what I valued. There wasn't like a moment, but it was like a slow burn of like watching myself and seeing myself navigate and operate. And you listen to the first few episodes of this and you listen to the current one, you're like, wow, he sounds more confident. He sounds like he's more sure of himself. He sounds like, it just sounds different to me. And the reason for that is because I know myself more. And when we know ourselves more, we're more confident.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you know yourself better. And because of that, you're more confident and you carry yourself with ease. And that's like one of the first things I noticed about you. I'm like, wow, this guy really feels okay with whatever happens or whatever has happened and is comfortable presenting himself. And that is such a cool feeling. But back to you, like, what was the light bulb for you? Was there one?
I don't know if there was a light bulb for me. It was just realizing that like, this is who I am, man. Like this is all part of my story. Like God put me in this place for a reason. Like this is not an accident, like how it happened. Like there's nothing that like I did where it was like, again, like it goes back to like, I think just like not having the regret of like, man, I worked as hard as I could. And like, I just let the chips fall where they may. And I think about that of like, if you've ever been around somebody that's like super successful, however you define success in your world, and you walk into the room with them and we were to sit down in these chairs and talk, they do have that, like, they're just kind of like relaxed. Like they're not like on edge. They're just kind of like, maybe they'll ask you a question about you. And I've always had so much like respect for that because it's like, it's just because like, they're just comfortable with who they are. And I think about that with my kids now. So I have 4 little kids and I think about like the journey that they're going to be going through to the time when they like become comfortable with themselves. And like, how can I get them earlier in life to see that like, man, like you are here for a reason. Like all the things that are like so great about you are there for a reason. All the things that like you think are flaws about you are there for a reason. Like you have to understand like how those all mold together in your life. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this is like who I am.
If I think about the times when I've been most comfortable with myself, it's because I was met with love. And if I think about the times when I was least comfortable with myself, it was because someone or something made me feel shame about the things that I was doing. And I think that the way you instill that in children, as a non-parent, you can correct me or think differently, is just like by being okay with whatever they present and operating with love and openness to seeing that like them be themselves is okay and accepted.
Yeah. I mean, I view it as like, you have to let people know that you care about them. And like, that can make all the difference in the world. Just like having like one person in their life that like is just accepting you for you.
Yeah.
And there's no agenda, there's no angle. It's just like, man, like I see you, like I appreciate you. And I want to be a part of like this thing you're doing. And like, if I can help you in any way, like I genuinely mean that. Like I want to help you in any way. I think that even that, like, another blessing that's come from sports is like there's so many people in professional sports like come around you that want to be on your bus for like the wrong reasons. Like they want like there's some angle or like they want tickets when you come in town or like whatever it is. And like I wasn't even that good. So like I can only imagine like the guys that are like making the all-star team every year. But like really finding those people that like they genuinely like it's just like, man, like I love what you're doing and like I just want to like do the thing with you.
Yeah. You said that one of the most difficult parts about playing in professional sports is that it sometimes seems like it's a business and people don't care about you at a deep level. So I'm sure like when it actually happened, it stood out. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's a lack of empathy and understanding for fellow human beings in professional sports?
I don't know. I mean, the one thing I would say is like, look, I remember somebody asked me about getting booed and they're like, man, that like you didn't pitch good and you got booed. And I was like, man, like I'm getting paid a lot of money to do this thing. And those people paid money to come here. And I was like, and they would switch places with me in a heartbeat. So like, if they want to boo, like, dude, like that's totally fine. Like, so let me preface it by saying like, there's a lot of like, as a professional athlete, you are getting paid a lot of money and you have a lot of attention and you are living like, in my opinion, like the greatest job in the world. So like, let me preface it by saying that, but like the empathy factor, like, I don't know. It's just, you view the person as a player. So like in baseball, you view him as like a baseball player. And I would give you an example. Another story, like I pitched at Busch Stadium and this was like the low point of my career. So I pitched at Busch Stadium, and at the time, I was like the last guy on the roster. So if you're the last guy on the roster as a pitcher, you're like the first guy to come out of the bullpen if the starter's struggling. So the starting pitcher guy starts the game struggling. Like, all right, like I'm probably coming in. Okay, like decide to pitch. I pitch, and I'm like, I think I got through like the first inning, second inning, like I gave up like a couple runs. They sent me back out, and I'm like just getting bombed. And I'm like, okay, like I was literally on the mound, like, all right, I know I'm getting sent down after this game. And I'm in St. Louis, so my hometown. Game ends. I'm in the locker room, and I go to walk to the bus. I kind of been like waiting around because like what happens is like game ends, GM comes down, manager's door opens, they call somebody in. They're like, Jacob, can you come talk to us? So like GM comes out of the manager's office. I'm like, okay, like I guess I'm not getting sent down. Like, okay, that's good. I go to the bus. I'm like about to get on the bus. And my phone rings, and it's like the GM. He's like, hey, can you come back? We need to talk to you. I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, can you just tell me over the phone, man? So like, I go back in. He tells me like, I'm getting sent down. So it was like this super like, okay, before, 20 minutes ago, I had like 40,000 people watching me. Now I was getting crushed, but they were still watching me. Now I'm like driving home to my house in St. Louis. My wife and my kids aren't there because I was playing for Washington at the time, so they're in DC. My family's not there. I'm just driving home to my house, like by myself. I was like, man, this is like a really lonely feeling. Like, and like at the time now, like 3 hours ago, I was pitching in front of like 40,000 people. But again, preface it with like, it's the best job in the world. Like anybody would trade places with you. Like, yeah, is it a crappy feeling? Sure. But like, you could always do something else. Like if you don't like it, like go do something else.
Yeah. No, but it doesn't minimize the poor experience. And it's like, it's probably the case that people didn't feel sorry for you or didn't have an understanding for your own struggles because they figured, he's a professional athlete. Like, how bad could it really be? But that doesn't minimize the struggle.
I mean, in a sense, yeah. But like, again, I chose that like this was the path I wanted to take. So like,
for sure,
I would always tell people that like if I got like booed or whatever, somebody was getting booed, it's like you could always do something else. Like, dude, there's a million people that would trade places with you. So like, but yeah, I think it's the idea of like you just view them as like an athlete and not as like a human being. And like I'm a big NFL fan. So like I like fantasy football. So like, your guy doesn't do good and you're like, man, like, I had that guy, I started him, like, he had this great matchup, and, like, he scored, like, 2 points. But it's like, dude, like, check yourself. Like, this guy's trying as hard as he can. Like, Like especially these NFL guys, like they have 16 games to like 17 games now to like just like completely ball out. So like just like put it in perspective.
Absolutely. Talk to me about, you mentioned parenting before and you have 4 children. What have been some of the most important lessons you've learned about being a parent?
Patience for one. I'm not like the most patient person, but just being patient with your kids. I would say the lesson that I've learned the most that has resonated with the rest of my life is kids don't change based on what you tell them. They change based on what you do. And you can tell them, like don't do that thing, but then if they see dad going to do that thing, they're going to keep doing that thing. And it's been such a great, like it's such a simple concept, but it's so pronounced in your kids because they're watching you. They want to see like, what are you going to do? And like, they don't want to hear what you're going to do. They want to see it. And it kind of like goes into like entrepreneurship and business. Like when you think about like in your personal life, you have core values, or in your business, if you have core values. We went through an exercise of like core values, and like I'd never really done that. I'm not like a huge like core value guy, but I was like, it was kind of cool. And one of the lessons I learned out of it was like the Walton family who started Walmart, like Sam Walton, like their whole mission with Walmart was like, they want to provide like really good, services to folks at like a lower price. And like the people that they're serving, like aren't living this like extravagant lifestyle. So then like when Walmart starts to become big, like they're living the core value. Like he's still driving the same truck. And like, it's like little things like that where like, yeah, he said that was important to him, but he's actually doing that. And then when I look around at like other companies today, the companies that have like the best culture are because like the person that said this was important to them as a business is doing that thing in their business. It's the same way with kids. Like if I said that like it's really important that we show up every day and like we're respectful to like everybody, if I'm not respectful when I meet somebody, if I don't treat somebody with the respect that they deserve, like how can I expect my kids to do that?
And I'm sure your kids now see you do 75 hard.
They do. They've been learning about discipline recently. We had a conversation. So I drive my kids to school in the morning, and my daughter is 7. She's like very intuitive. Like she likes to like take information in. I can tell she like is really thinking about it. So they do chores around the house, and they do chores because like they want to make some money at like the end of the week or whatever. But I was telling them about discipline. I was like, yeah, like Hadley, do you know what discipline means? And she's like, well, I know you always say like discipline because I wake up in the morning and I go for my morning walk. And I'm like, do you think daddy wants to get up every morning when it's dark outside and go for that morning walk? And she's like, no, but you have to be disciplined, right? And I was like, yes, exactly. And I'm like, do you know what discipline is? She's like, no. I'm like, that's okay. We'll teach you. And I was like, discipline is just like when you like are doing something that you don't really feel like doing it. I was like, maybe you have homework today and you don't feel like doing it, but you know you need to do it. And she's like, yeah. And so it's like really cool to like be able to like instill like hopefully a little lesson of discipline, because like ultimately discipline's like where everything good in my life has come from.
So cool. What inspired you to start 75 Hard?
Well, I help people to have a dream and a vision for like 30 or 40 years. And I help people do this in a way of like doing all these little things for 30 or 40 years. So like it takes a lot of discipline. And in our business, my brother and I worked together, and we were having a conversation, and we'd always known what 75 Hard was. We kind of wanted to do like a fun challenge. And I was like, if we can't be ultra disciplined for 75 days, like how can we be preaching to like the folks that we're helping and like guiding along this path that like they should be disciplined for like 30 years. And that's what it led from, is like we had this conversation. I'm like, it's 75 days. Plus I'd always wanted to do it. And I can honestly say it's been like a life-changing experience doing it. And I feel like I was a relatively disciplined person before. Like people would say, my wife would say like, Jacob is really disciplined. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. But this is It's been life-changing. I can honestly say that.
What's been so life-changing about it?
Just the notion of when you look at 75 hard, you have your task, you have your daily reading, you have your gallon of water, you have your 2 workouts. On the surface, when you look at it in like one day, you're like, yeah, that doesn't seem like that challenging. But you realize like what it takes to do that 75 days in a row, and I'm on day 55 now. 75 days in a row that's a long time. And I would say that part has been interesting for me. The other thing though for me that's been really, really interesting, and I've seen some people write about this stuff on Twitter, but going for walks, I've never done walks ever. I'm always just like in constant motion, but never walks. And walks have been like this amazing unlock. Walks, sometimes I walk and I listen to a podcast, but sometimes I just walk and like I don't listen to anything. It's just me. I'm walking for 45 minutes to an hour. And like for the first 10 minutes, your thoughts are coming in, you're thinking about the day, but then it's like this moment hits, and all of a sudden it's just like this stream of ideas. And you're like, I didn't even write down like all these ideas because like I have all these ideas. That part's been such an unlock for me. Like something that like I will 100% keep doing in my life. Just like the idea of walking, it sounds so simple, but like the benefits of it are massive.
When you go on walks, do you bring a notepad or you write down notes in your phone?
Notes in my phone. I have no good place to do it. So like sometimes I'll go back to a note that I put down and I won't have like been detailed enough. I'm like, okay, I said that. What was I thinking when I said that? And I've used like Evernote, I've used Notion, I've used just the notes on my iPhone. I haven't really found anything that's like super great. So if you got anything, like let me know. But I'm always like, I need like a dictation thing where I'm just like, I can like speak, because I don't want to like stop walking either. So I'm like, but yeah, it's been a huge unlock. I would tell anybody to do that.
I used to use a recorder so that I wouldn't use my phone and just like bring the recorder with me. But I just write down notes in my phone now, like in the notes app.
Yeah.
So that's worked out. And then you mentioned Twitter before, and I'm sure it was an interesting transition going from having zero, or it seemed like zero online presence. I know you had an Instagram account or Twitter before, but you didn't really use it for professional reasons.
Yeah.
What's been that journey like?
Social media is weird. Like, dude, it's weird. It's really weird. So my journey on social media is like, this thing is terrible. Like, why would anybody use it? To like, wow, this thing is really powerful if used in the right way. So I actually did have an online presence before. So like being this draft pick, I had a Twitter account, had like a decent amount of followers, but like I wasn't playing well. So as you can imagine, like in the comment section, not positive. And I'm like, man, this is just like not good for me to be like reading this stuff. And like athletes can say they don't read it. Like unless they have the comments off on some social platform, they're reading it. Okay. Like I can remember one bus trip, we like had guys come up to the front of the bus and read off mean tweets like Jimmy Kimmel does. And the funniest part about the mean tweets is like every time that somebody read it, you're like, oh yeah, that's like kind of true. Like it wasn't like they were saying things that were like untrue. It was like, like that guy's hairstyle's bad, or like that guy pitched bad, or like it was kind of comical. But for me, I deleted it because I was like, man, I don't want to do this social media thing. And when I was playing baseball, I never talked about baseball. Like if anybody asked me what I did, I would do anything in my power to not tell them I played baseball, because I just want them to get to know me as me and not like Jacob, the baseball player. And again, like I preface that by being like, it wasn't like I was this superstar baseball player, but people tend to like view you differently when you say like you play professional sports. So when I got done playing, again, like social media, I didn't really do it. And I had some people in my life that were on Twitter and were like, oh, you should like tell your story on Twitter. And I was like, dude, my story's like not that interesting. Like people don't want to hear about my story. And so I get Twitter, I start like posting a little bit. I'm like doing the whole like posting into the abyss, because like I literally started Twitter with like no followers. I don't even know what I'm doing. So
what is this?
This was like January of 2022, I think.
So like a little bit over a year.
A little bit over a year. It might have been a little after that. I don't know. You'd have to look at I think Twitter, I'm still not an expert, but I think Twitter shows you like when you start it. So like a little over a year, and like for the first while I'm just like posting in the abyss, but I've always actually really loved writing. Like writing was like outside of math, like I loved writing. So I was like, oh, this is like kind of interesting. I can just like write my thoughts. And it's really weird because like posting something for the first time, you're just like, okay, I'm like, again, I'm posting the abyss. Nobody's even seeing this. And I'm just like, post. Okay, this feels like a big moment in my life. Like, and anyways, I have a friend that helped me write kind of like my baseball journey from like the draft day or whatever, and he got some good traction. And since then, I've been just like posting educational stuff about money, entrepreneurship, baseball, sports, and it's been a wild ride. That's why I say like Twitter, social media is weird. Is like I've gone from thinking that like, man, this thing is like so negative, like this is bad for my mental health, to like there's this group of people on there that are like really great people, and like hopefully like I've shared stuff with some people that I haven't connected with that like has helped them in their life. So it can certainly be powerful.
I've just noticed how seriously you're taking it. Like I see you replying to people. I see how consistently you're showing up for yourself. And I'm really impressed by the way in which you're taking it super seriously. Like what got you started to, like, do you have metrics that you're trying to hit every day? Like, do you have, because it seems like that from the outside looking in, like this guy's really serious about this thing.
Yeah. You know what Twitter has made me do is it's made me think bigger. So I don't know if you read the book, The Magic of Thinking Big, but great book if you haven't read it. And it's such a simple concept of like, we often live in a bubble of whatever it is. Like on Twitter, there's people that live in like a Twitter bubble, and then you get outside Twitter and you're like, all these people are like, Twitter's still a thing? And you're like, yeah, Twitter's like really popular. Like you should check it out. Or you live in a bubble of like the people that you're around every day, or the people that like you hang out with on Friday night, or the people that are like in your city. And like when you break out of that bubble and you get into something else, you're like, wow, there's like this whole world out here. And Twitter has helped me just think so much bigger. Like what my passion is, like outside of like, I get done playing baseball, I'm like, man, I just want to like educate people around money. I don't know where that goes, like what that looks like, but like that's what I want to do. And the more I've gotten on Twitter, the more I'm like, wow, this is like a great way for me to like start educating more people around money. And it's just that's been like the biggest unlock for me, is just like thinking big. So like in terms of metrics, like I'm not like an expert on like, I am a student of the game. Like in everything I've done, I've always been like a student of the game. So like seeing people that are like doing it really well, and like I have so much respect for like some of the consistency that some of these guys put out, and like the quality of like what they're putting out. But frankly, like I'm just learning stuff along the way too. Like there's people that I just follow them because like I'm just like learning. I'm like, wow, that's like super interesting. Like it's such valuable content, because like think about like, 50 years ago, like there's none of this out there. Like you had to like go find and like search these people out, and like now like you can just have like their stream of consciousness like coming in. Like you can use it totally the wrong way, but if you use it like that, it's like, wow, like I can learn so much from so many different people.
Who are some of your favorite follows?
I have different favorite follows for like different reasons. I think there's like, I follow some young athletes to see like how they're thinking versus like how I was thinking, like just more so from like a perspective. I think Alex Hormozy obviously is has a big presence on a lot of different platforms, but he has some really amazing content and frameworks and things that the way that he thinks about stuff, and some of the things he's done in his life that you're like, wow, that's like, that's like really interesting. I can remember before I was even on Twitter, so Nick talks about like the sweaty startup. So like, this was like before I even had a Twitter, but like, I've always loved like boring businesses that make money. And he kind of talks about like boring businesses and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's like, and I'm not like a real estate guy, so to speak. So it's like helpful to like learn like what they share and like seeing like some of the stuff they're doing. But I just love like, I followed a guy today that like does triathlons, and I'm like, I don't know if I'll do a triathlon, but like, I'll check this out. Like, this seems cool. Like
Ryan Dreyer?
I'd like just followed him, so I couldn't even tell you his name.
I love it.
But he's like, I turned like former athletes into triathlons. I was like, oh, maybe I'll check this guy out.
So cool, man. It's like you can start finding these different rabbit holes, and you start going down, and you're like, oh my God. And you're in that stage right now, I feel like, of exploration, of just like, this person seems cool, this person, and it's like, it's awesome. Like,
yeah.
It's cool to see.
Yeah. What's the Twitter journey been like for you?
I started on Twitter in 2009. And I did that because I had a time management blog and I wanted more people to see it. And then I did that for a few months. Then in 2011, started Nick's blog, went on Twitter, and then came back to it in 2018. And I was talking about marketing, e-commerce, drop shipping, and I made a bunch of friends on there. And slowly, and I wasn't even comfortable enough to like put my real name on it. I went by the handle Danny Roars. And it was like this journey of getting to know myself better through writing and through sharing my ideas. And then I have friends, and then I have more friends. And now you're looking at like the account that's like 5 years into it, right? Of just this account. And so it's been a long, slow journey, like anything, but I've always felt most comfortable expressing myself through writing. And it's only most recently where I've felt comfortable asking people questions and communicating. And it's just like, all of it is just to try to get a deeper exploration of self. That's what Twitter is.
Danny Roars. That sounds like some subreddit thread. Like
exactly.
Like you should be on like the GameStop short or something.
No, that's 100% accurate. And the thing is, it's like, I think it's a good way for people to start putting themselves out there if they don't feel comfortable with themselves. They know they want to create, but they don't feel comfortable with themselves. Use an alias. Use a pen name. Be synonymous, because like there's so much benefit from putting yourself out there. And if you don't want to do it with your name, your face, that's okay. You don't have to. You can still gain a lot of the benefits.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I want to circle back on something. So the magic of thinking big.
Yes.
So one thing that I have a lot of respect for you on is like, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you've always had like these big dreams. Like you just thought big. Like that was like normal, like thinking big, right? So like I have kids now, and like, I don't know what my kids will do. I just want them to like do what they're passionate about doing and like find their way on their own and make their own thing. But I would love that they like grow up just like thinking big. So like, what made you from a young age have that mindset?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that my grandma, my mom, always instilled this belief in me that I could do whatever I set my mind to. But more recently, I would say the real big thinking came from when I found something that I could see myself doing for a long time, which is hard when you're a child to do, because you don't, like for me at least, you could see yourself playing baseball for a long time. So it's easier to think like, okay, how expand the vision, expand where you're at. Like, did you do that when you were 14, 15? You were like, all right, I'm going to expand the vision. I'm playing high school now. I could play in college. I could play.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can still remember like in carpool. We used to carpool to school in like 7th grade. Yeah. Shout out Mrs. Leonard. So Mrs. Leonard, she was like, went around the car. She's like, all right, I want everybody to tell me like what they want to do when they grow up. And I remember I was like, I want to be a professional baseball player. And she was like, Jacob, you need to be more realistic. And like, dude, this is 7th grade, and I still remember this like it was yesterday. So like, we live in this world where like everybody tells you like you can't do that. Like that's not like a normal thing to do. You can't do that. And like, I understand what she's saying. Like the odds of this happening are like astronomically low. And like, I live in St. Louis, Missouri. Like, you know, like there's all these factors going against me, right? At the time, I'm not even the best player on my team, right? But like, this is what I want to do. So like, how do I instill that? I think about that for my kids. Like, how do I instill that in them? This belief of, and I don't want it to be frivolous of like, I can do anything I put my mind to, but like truly thinking big, like thinking that like, okay, like I could go start a company, because a lot of people don't even think that, like even a small business, they don't think like they could do that because maybe nobody in their family's done that. And they think that like the only way for me to have success is like me doing this thing that I don't even really want to do. And like the peak is like not really that high. And like, I don't even, but like, that's the world that they're living in has like ingrained that like, that's thinking big.
Dude, it's so funny that you bring that up, because I was thinking today about how like really what just separated me is just the ability to imagine an incredibly better future. And like, if you can imagine a better future, you can then take the steps that are actually going to make that a reality, and then reverse engineer, what did that person who achieved incredible feats, what did they do? And can you copy that in some way? And for a long time, I felt as if I had no one to copy because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I was capable of imagining like an incredible future. And so for me, why do I do that? Because I want to have the most fun that I possibly can in life. And I work really hard because I imagine like this could get way funner. And it already has. I'm talking to a professional baseball player, somebody who played in the league for 10 years. Like that to me is wild. And that doesn't happen unless you just do the work consistently, imagine a brighter day, and continue to tell people about the vision as well. So to answer your question, how do you instill that in children? I think it's giving love, like patting them on the back when they do things that are good, trying to figure out their own interests and curiosities and be like, could you see yourself doing this in 10 years? Right?
So who are the people that you're looking to right now? You said like, I see people, I realize like I want to do this for a long time. So like, who are those people?
Well, so I looked at Joe Rogan, and you see that he did 3 episodes a week for 10 years. And very few people have done 3 podcast episodes a week for 10 years. And I've been doing this podcast for 882 days, and I've put out 320 episodes. So I've done 1 episode every 3 days, which is, I don't know, probably someone can correct me, but it's probably like 2.5 episodes a week for 2.5 years. It's like, okay, now keep doing that for another 2.5, for another 2.5, for another 2.5. Now you're 10 years into it. And guess what? I probably won't be Rogan at that point, but I'll be a lot further than the people who knew that and didn't do anything about it. So
I love how simple you broke that down. Because like, well, no, seriously, because people think like the hardest part about thinking big is they see what it looks like at the end or what they want it to be. You know, you say like Joe Rogan, you're like, but like if somebody that was just starting podcasting, you're like, hey, I can teach you to be Joe Rogan. They're like, come on, man. And you're like, no, but let me break it down like this. Okay, like break it down in bite-sized chunks and then understand that like, hey, dude, there's going to be so many lull periods in this moment where you're just like, I'm pushing through. It goes back to discipline, right? But like you have that end goal in mind, you're thinking big as opposed to like, if you just said like, I just want to be a good podcaster in Austin. And, you know, like I want some cool people in Austin to come check me out. Like that would be the pinnacle. So in turn, you'd be like, yeah, I'll release an episode like once every 2 weeks. Maybe if I can't find a guest, we'll skip a month. And you're like, no, I want to be like Joe Rogan. So like, I want to do like 3 every week for 10 years. And that's going to get me there.
Well, the crazy thing about it is it actually gets easier the bigger you dream because more people will help you achieve the thing. And so it's like, how do you just like, if you say you're going to Mars, you're going to attract the best people who want to get to Mars as well on that mission. But if you're just like, all right, I want to like fly around the earth a few times, like we've already done that. Like it doesn't instill that same, people want to be a part of a story. People want to be excited. People want to say like, oh, I was there at episode 328.
Yeah.
You know, like people want to say that. So if you know that that's where you're going and you tell people about it, it's like, well, like you're helping people help you by thinking bigger.
That's so true. So like even for you, when we first met, I remember I asked you, I was like, so what's like the goal of the podcast? And you're like, I want to be the best podcaster in the world. Like without hesitation. Like it wasn't even like you thought about it. You weren't like, okay, let me think like of a good answer. You're just like, no, I want to be the best podcaster in the world. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, man, like that's really cool. Like it, because the people that I've been around that have been the quote unquote most successful just have like this belief system in their self that like, if I do this thing for long enough, like it's just going to work. Not like I think it's going to work. It's like, no, that's like what I'm doing.
And you have to believe it.
You have to believe it.
Before it is a reality. Like I'm already thinking about, I wish I did this differently. In this interview, I wish I did this. And then I'm like, all right, like that's why you do it 1,000 more times.
Yeah.
And that's why you review the footage. For you, like how do you think about reviewing footage of yourself? What are the best ways to break down your own performance?
I think you have to start with understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are. So in baseball, in sports in general, one thing that I tell like athletes now is like, if I could do anything differently in terms of like reviewing footage and like getting better, it would be I would just go all in on my strengths and make those like super outlier tools. And it's not to say like I wouldn't work on the weaknesses, but like those are my strengths. Like I want to make them so good that like it's just undeniable. And even if like as a baseball player, like as a pitcher, even if that's only one pitch, it's like it's so undeniably good that you just like you got to keep promoting me because I have like the best fastball, the best slider, whatever it is. So like if you think about that in your own life, it's like it's not to say you ignore the weaknesses, but for me, I was always trying to be like the complete player. And like I don't know if that's wrong, but having those outlier things where you're like, this is what I am the best in the world at doing, and just saying like, I'm going to go all in on that. I think that gets you to a further place than saying like, I just want to be like a 7 out of 10 on everything. So like, that's how I think about it, but curious to hear how you think about it. Cause I know you're a student of the game in terms of consistently getting better.
For me, it's just like, I think about how can I look back at everything that I've done and like take notes on. So every episode I listen to usually 2 or 3 times. And so I watch it once at 2x speed and then I'll listen to it again. And it's like, all right, well, you're putting out 3 a week. You're listening to yourself 2 or 3 times. You're studying for the guests. Like, it's just like, I think like you can't beat the hours. And there's very few people that are listening to themselves for multiple hours a week. There's very few people that are having deep, high-level conversations with people for multiple hours a week. And I'm just getting like the best education in the world. So for me, how I think about it is like, I'm just going to spend a lot of time, but I would love to know like from a addiction coach or like somebody who really spends time, and I can have them on the podcast to like talk about it, to figure it out. And that's the beautiful thing about it is like, how can you choose something that even if you lose, you still win? For example, if I did this podcast, no one listened, I would still have won because I get to talk to amazing people. I get to learn about their story and I get to learn about myself and how I can communicate better. For you, did you think about that at all? Like, how do I win even if I quote unquote lose?
See, I think about it in the concept of like thinking big. Because like if you think so big and you're like, maybe I don't get to, like we use baseball example. I'm like, okay, like I'm thinking like, now that I'm a professional baseball player, I want to be like a Hall of Famer, right? And like I don't end up becoming a Hall of Famer, but like I still like got to the big leagues and like achieved my dream and all this stuff. So it's like, although like I didn't get to like the pinnacle of like what the dream was, like failing is like, okay, like that was still pretty good. But if my thinking big was like, I want to make my high school varsity baseball team, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's like, if that's your goal, like that's great. But like, I would just encourage people to like really think outside of like what their mind allows them to, because like when you think so big that you're like, yeah, I failed, but like I'm the second biggest podcaster in the world, right? Like not a terrible outcome.
Yeah, no, I'll be quite happy with that outcome, but I'll also like be kind of pissed.
You'll be listening on 2x speed still.
Dude, this has been so much fun. I'm so grateful for you. I like to end these podcasts with challenges for people so people can take the actions that they take. They could listen to this podcast and take some action from it. Does a challenge come to mind from everything we spoke about?
The challenge that I would say, and I think it comes to mind from the standpoint of like how we even met and interacted in the first place, is truly letting people know that like, hey, there's great people in the world that just want to help you. I call it like being on somebody's bus. And my dad gave me this little toy bus when I was getting drafted. And he was like, hey, Jacob, just understand like there's going to be people that want to get on this bus that aren't in it for you. So understanding like who's on your bus. But the encouragement that I would give you guys is like, think about like whose bus you can tell somebody like, hey, I'm on your bus, man. I just want you to know that. Like no matter what happens, like I'm on your bus. And I think when I think about like our conversation today, like how we've gotten to know each other, when I think of like the benefits of Twitter, when I think about like the relationships I've built through baseball, all the great things have come through like people that have just like encouraged me and been on my bus. And just letting people know like, hey man, like I just want you to know like I'm on the bus. Because like we don't say that enough to people.
Well, dude, I'm so grateful you're on my bus because you've been an incredibly helpful resource on it. And I feel the support so tremendously. So thank you so much, man. I feel blessed that you're on my team. And where can we send people to connect with you further?
Twitter, man. Like
The Sudden Wealth,
The
baby.
Sudden Wealth.
Follow this man, and he's linked below. Anywhere else?
Twitter, everything's The Sudden Wealth.
Okay.
Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I know people aren't really on LinkedIn as much, although it's getting bigger.
It's getting bigger. We'll link them all down below. Thank you so much, Jacob.
Yeah, man. Danny, I appreciate it.